No one thought the day would really come when Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, would say goodbye forever. For decades, his voice roared through speakers, his wild energy filled stadiums, and his name became a symbol of rebellion and rock and roll. But now, the same voice that once screamed into microphones has gone silent, and the silence is louder than any scream. His funeral wasn't just a goodbye, it felt like the end of an era. The news broke slowly, and fans around the world froze. Could this really be the end of Ozzy? People started asking questions that no one wanted to answer. What did he say before he passed? Who was there with him? Was he scared? Was he at peace? No one really knows all the details, but one thing is clear. His final goodbye was not just sad, it was unforgettable. The way it happened, the emotions in the room, the faces of those who loved him, everything felt like a scene from a powerful movie. Some say Ozzy knew this day was coming, and he had prepared for it in his own way. He didn't want a big, loud show like his concerts. He wanted something quiet, something meaningful, something real. And that's exactly what it was. It wasn't the kind of goodbye his fans expected, but maybe it was the one he needed. The moment his coffin was carried in, people could barely breathe. The music stopped, the lights dimmed, and time seemed to freeze. All the wild moments, the scandals, the laughter, the madness, they were all gone in that one still moment. People cried, but they also smiled, remembering how one man had touched so many lives. From the young boy in Birmingham who dreamed of singing to the legend who rocked the world, Ozzy's journey was one filled with chaos, pain, love, and fire. And in the end, it ended not with noise, but with a quiet that spoke louder than any song. Some say they felt his presence in the room, like he was watching it all, giving one last wink before leaving for good. It's hard to believe someone so loud could leave in such a silent way, but maybe that's what made it beautiful. His final goodbye reminded the world that even legends have to rest, even the strongest fall, and even the loudest hearts eventually go quiet. But what he left behind, the music, the memories, the madness, will never die. His fans still hold on to every word, every scream, every moment. And even though he's gone, Ozzy's spirit still echoes in the hearts of millions, louder than ever. That was his final curtain call, and it shook the world in a way no one expected. Something happened behind those closed doors that the world may never fully understand. And fans can't stop wondering what really went on inside Ozzy Osbourne's private funeral. It wasn't open to the public, and no cameras were allowed, which only made people more curious. Why so much secrecy? What was being protected? Those who were invited were close family, a few old friends, and a handful of rock legends who had shared the stage and the madness with Ozzy over the years. But even they walked out of that room looking changed, their faces pale, their eyes full of something no one could quite explain. People who knew him said it wasn't just a farewell, it was something deeper, something spiritual, almost like the room was filled with memories instead of just people. Some whispered that a personal letter Ozzy wrote before he passed was read out loud, and that it made everyone cry. Others said Sharon stood up and spoke about their life together, and that her words left the entire room in silence, as if no one dared to breathe. There were stories shared that no one had ever heard before, secrets from his wildest days, gentle moments with his children, private fears he never showed the world. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a soft piece of music played in the background, one of Ozzy's lesser-known songs, the kind he only sang when he was hurting or lost. It felt like he had chosen it himself, like it was his final message. Some people said they could feel his energy in the room, like he was still there, watching, maybe even smiling. The walls were decorated not with fame and glory, but with quiet reminders of who he really was behind the spotlight. A photo of him holding his newborn daughter, a guitar with broken strings from a wild concert night, a letter from a fan who said Ozzy's music saved his life. Everything inside that funeral felt like it told a part of his story, the real one, not just the one from magazines and headlines. No one came out bragging about what they saw. In fact, most stayed quiet, maybe because it was too painful, or maybe because they had just witnessed something sacred. And that's what makes it all even more mysterious. What really happened inside that private goodbye? What was said, what was felt, what was left behind? The world may never know. But one thing is sure, whatever happened in that room was not just a goodbye. It was a final, quiet chapter to a life that was anything but quiet. And now, that silence has become the loudest part of his story, echoing in the hearts of those who loved him and leaving behind a mystery that may never be solved. Just before the world lost him, Ozzy Osbourne said something that no one can forget. And ever since that moment, people have been trying to understand what it truly meant. Those final words, spoken in a quiet voice by a man known for being so loud and wild, left a mark on everyone who heard them. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't dramatic, but it carried a kind of pain and peace that was hard to describe. Some say he whispered something to Sharon that made her break down in tears right away. Others say he asked for one last song, something soft and slow, something that reminded him of who he used to be before the fame. There are even stories that he spoke to his children, holding their hands one last time, and said something so personal that they haven't been able to share it with anyone. What did Ozzy really say in those final hours? Was it a goodbye, a confession, or maybe a message meant for the world? No one knows for sure, and that mystery is now a part of his legend. People close to him said his final days were filled with moments of silence, long stares out the window, soft music playing in the background, and a feeling in the room that something big was coming. He didn't fight it. He knew. And he chose to spend that time in peace, with no cameras, no noise, just the people he loved and the memories that made him who he was. His body was weak, but his mind was still sharp, and that's what makes his last words even more powerful. He was aware. He meant every word. And though those words haven't been made public, the way people reacted tells us everything. Sharon couldn't speak for hours afterward. His children hugged each other and stayed close. The doctors and nurses in the room even stepped away, giving space, as if they knew they were watching the end of something bigger than just a life. It was the end of a story that had touched millions. What he said is now being held like a treasure, locked away by those who were there, protected from the noise of the outside world. And maybe that's how Ozzy wanted it. After all the years of headlines and chaos, maybe he just wanted his last words to be real, quiet, and full of truth. People around the world keep asking what he said, searching for clues in old interviews, in lyrics, even in his silence. But maybe the real message is not in the words themselves, but in the way he chose to say goodbye, with love, with honesty, and with peace. It's a mystery that only adds more depth to the man behind the music, and it's one that fans will keep thinking about for the rest of their lives. She stood there quietly, her eyes full of memories, and in that moment, the strong woman the world had seen for years looked completely broken. Sharon Osbourne, who had been by Ozzy's side through every high and low, through madness and fame, through sickness and recovery, finally reached the moment she feared the most, the moment she had to let him go. People often saw her as tough, smart, and full of control, always speaking up, always defending her husband no matter what the world said about him. But on that day, at that final goodbye, she didn't have to say a word because her face said everything. Those who were there said it was one of the most emotional things they had ever seen. She walked slowly toward the front, toward his casket, holding something in her hands, and no one knew what it was until she gently placed it down. A simple photo of their younger days, full of laughter and love before the fame, before the chaos. That single act brought tears to everyone in the room. It reminded them that behind all the noise, all the headlines, all the wild concerts and dark music, there was a real love story. A story full of pain, mistakes, healing, and deep connection. Sharon had seen Ozzy at his worst. She had picked him up when he had fallen. She had held him when he was lost. And now, for the first time, she had to say goodbye without being able to save him. Some said she whispered something to him one last time, something only he could hear. Others say she stayed by his side long after everyone had left, as if waiting for a sign or just refusing to believe it was really over. The connection between them was never perfect, but it was real, and in those final moments, it became clearer than ever. People in the room didn't just feel sadness, they felt the weight of a bond that had lasted through everything. That room, filled with quiet music and the soft sound of people crying, became a space where love was stronger than death. Sharon didn't speak much during the ceremony, but when she did, her voice shook, and every word felt like it was pulled straight from her soul. She didn't talk about fame or money or awards. She talked about a boy who made her laugh, a man who made her cry, and a partner who stood with her through the storms. She said loving Ozzy was never easy, but it was always worth it. And with that, she sat down, holding the photo in her lap, her fingers shaking. No one could look away, and no one would forget what they saw. Sharon Osbourne didn't just lose a husband that day. She lost a piece of herself. And in that painful silence, the world finally saw the heart behind the woman who had stood so strong for so long. Everyone thought Ozzy Osbourne's funeral would be wild, loud, and full of drama, just like his life had always been. People expected flashing lights, rock music shaking the walls, famous guests lining up to speak, and fans crowding the streets. But what actually happened was the complete opposite, and that's what made it so shocking. Instead of a massive event, it was quiet, soft, and deeply personal, almost like a hidden goodbye. It caught everyone by surprise. How could a man who lived so loudly leave in such silence? That's what people keep asking. There were no long speeches from celebrities, no big concerts, no public celebrations. Just a small group of close family and friends gathered in a peaceful room, filled with soft light, gentle music, and memories floating in the air. Some say Ozzy had planned it that way, that he didn't want to show this time. He wanted something real, something that showed who he truly was behind the fame. And the people who were there said it felt like stepping into a dream, one where time slowed down and every little detail meant something. There were small items placed around the room that told the story of his life. A broken guitar, a handwritten note from his daughter, a photo of him smiling without makeup or costumes, just being himself. It felt like Ozzy was speaking through those things, showing his fans that he wasn't just the Prince of Darkness, but also a man who loved deeply, laughed often, and struggled like anyone else. The boudoir. Silence in the room was powerful, almost louder than any music he had ever played. People didn't talk much. They just stood there, some crying quietly, others holding hands, all feeling the weight of something bigger than words. Even those who had known him for years said they had never felt anything like it. It wasn't about fame anymore. It was about goodbye. The kind of goodbye that makes your chest hurt and your heart pause. And maybe that's exactly what Ozzy wanted, to leave the world with a moment that felt honest and human, not covered by noise or lights. He had spent his life on stage, surrounded by chaos, and now, in his final moment, he chose peace. That choice surprised everyone, and yet, it felt exactly right. It reminded people that even the biggest stars are still people, and sometimes the quietest endings say the most. Fans who heard about it later were stunned. They expected something big, but now they're left wondering what that small, private goodbye must have felt like. And in that wonder, they feel closer to him than ever before. Ozzy didn't leave the way people thought he would, but he left a feeling behind that will stay with them forever. A quiet farewell for a loud legend, and that silence still echoes.